Welcome back everybody to Project Alteration Ultimate Home Couture. This video is the first of videos looking at the specific 4 main skills in terms of alteration. Now this isn't rocket science. Behind me, by the way, is I have the dress that is going to be operated on today. Oh yes, now the provenance of this dress is a little bit kind of spooky. I acquired it. No. Nothing here that is like, I just kind of want to explain why I own a dress that is kind of like basically too small for me. It's kind of like, why would I do that to myself? But anyhow, a friend gave this to me, so it's all good. So there you go. What is going to happen today is that this dress, this very little dress, is going to be made bigger, and I'm going to explain the process of that, and I'm going to take you through it step by step so that you can start doing this at home with all of those things that you really, really love that you can't quite necessarily fit perfectly into anymore. All right, so this is Project Alteration as part of Groundswell Ecosystems. The website is groundswellecosystems.com. I am interested in sort of ways for people to take part in a proactive and eco-positive way, in daily, environmentally sustainable ways. I do not have all the answers. I am searching for them, and I am experimenting with them as I go along. But certainly altering things and making things is one of the things that I've been doing all my days, so this is something I can certainly share and contribute with. You will see, I know that this is what YouTubers do, all right, bless, okay. You will see a button down there. Down there, press subscribe and press the notifications button, switch that to all right, and you will see all the videos that come up, because obviously I'm going to be covering these 6 main skills as we go along with specific make and do guidance videos. This one is about how to make something bigger with side panels. We obviously will also be looking at how to make things slimmer, yes, wonderful, or not so wonderful, as you choose. And we will also be looking at obviously shortening stuff and lengthening stuff, the ways that you can go about doing that, as well as looking at all the embellishments. What are the basic techniques for all of the embellishments when you want to like totally turn something around and make it extraordinary, making the ordinary extraordinary. And then of course there's the more advanced stuff with really how to resculpt garments, how to completely reshape things, and that is really just like the great art of the bespoke meaning that you design specifically for yourself. All of this, as a matter of fact, goes under the glorious and ancient heading of bespoke, because bespoke is the original tailoring term for stuff that is made specifically for you. And the great news about coveting what we own already and taking it to another level is that we turn that stuff into stuff that is unique, tailor-made and bespoke, just like you are. Everybody is bespoke, all right? Just want to say a quick shout out from Pierre. He's got his emerging side and his non-emerging side. Pierre is still here. He's become very into this whole YouTube thing. And here, of course, are the great threads. Yes, yes. I am ticking this stuff off as I go along. Just a quick word about how to choose fabric now that we are here. I'll give you a little guidance shot to the dress in a second. Right, what this dress is it's a long wraparound dress, okay, it's fairly standard, all right, with obviously one of the ties goes through a hole here. We're going to be slitting it down the side and putting in panels to widen it. Now you might think that that drastically alters the shape of the dress. It actually doesn't, because basically you're following things on a linear basis, so you're simply just increasing width. In terms of the fabric that I chose, let me just quickly do a close-up with this fabric. Right, it's quite a soft sort of floral fabric with that kind of splayed across the place floral design. What I did is, obviously I couldn't find anything exactly specific to that, so I got something which kind of mimicked it. It isn't perfect. Sometimes you can find perfect doubles, sometimes you can't. What this does is it's got the same soft texture. It's a rayon, got the same soft flowing texture, and even though the blossoms are clearly not identical, they follow a similar kind of shape, so it's going to be fairly unnoticeable or barely noticeable down the side. And here's something, I've got to the point where it's kind of like you build that in and it's noticeable or not noticeable, it becomes kind of synonymous with the garment. It really isn't a problem. One of the first things that we're going to do is we're going to look at the length of fabric that we actually have. I love this, it's we. What this we is, this royal we. We're going to look at the length of fabric that I actually have and look at how it fits into the garment, and we'll sort that out in a minute. Life is good, step by step. If you see me ranting from behind the screen, it's because I'm showing you how to do everything. Yes, here we go. Okay, so the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to check the length of the side of the dress. There we go. So here we go, is our opening point is the end of the sleeve. It goes right the way down the side, all the way down right to the hem. That is our length that we are looking at, that we're going to fit our panel in. Yes, I've given in and I'm just using the royal we. I've watched like a lot of like YouTube videos, so I want to like be like them. Okay, so here we go. And then what we have here is I am going to just quickly roughly check that the fabric length that I've got actually fits, so that we don't run out and actually have to kind of graft on various sections. And it does, which is all good, right? I can see that easily. So what this means is we now know what we're going to do. We're going to cut down the sides, and here I'm going to create panels. Okay, now in terms of the width of the panels, I am going to estimate right now. All right, you can go down the long route, all right, and you can measure, etc. Help yourself to doing that. What I find really helpful and not a problem at all is I simply estimate and adjust later in a final seam. Right, so here you go. Next thing is I'm going to cut these panels, and then I'm going to show you how to fit them into the side of the dress. Marvelous. Okay, so here we are. We've got the fabric that we're going to use for the panel laid out on a table. A quick note about this table is these are fantastic fold-out heavy-duty tables. That this is a 6-foot long table. You can get them on eBay, etc. for £30. They do carry a sewing machine, and they're fantastic if you've got if you have difficulty finding a place to lay out fabric and cut. Now, what I'm going to do is I tend to be a little bit cavalier with this. I tend to be a bit casual. This is from years of like foraging around with sewing machines and fabric. What I'm doing is I fold it over the side, so I'm going to cut 2. All right, I'm going to cut down, and I've cut way in excess of what I might need, because you never know, if the mood takes me, I might want something extra voluminous. So here you go. I've also cut, so I'm cutting off the extra that I don't need. There you go, there's the extra. There's the start of the 2 panels. I've folded them over. When you fold over, try and make that as evenly and as square as possible, because it's going to make it easy for you to cut along the line. Right. In terms of the reason why I cut so much extra as well is because, I'll explain this later, it might give you the chance for extra shaping. Okay, that's an option. So you cut your bit here. Now what I've done here is I'm just going to do this down the side. Oopsie. In fact, that's a pain, because it's a very soft fabric. It keeps on jumping up, so I was going to cut it over the fold. So I'm just going to not cut it over the fold, and I'm just going to cut all the way straight down. Follow the line. Don't sweat it. Seriously, don't sweat it. I'm not recommending that you hack it up, but I would say don't lose sleep over it. It doesn't have to be so horribly perfect. So there you go. You've got these 2 panels, and I know that this length is going to fit in from the bottom hem to the sleeve. Right, those are ready. Hi there. What we're going to do right now is we're going to prepare the dress by cutting open the side seams. Now that is going to be the one that is most on the side, okay, because you're going to get the most even expansion. Don't cut it necessarily on an angled seam or anything like that. Just go for the most obvious, most basic underarm seam. Okay, now what I'm going to do here is you will see that there is indeed obviously a seam. I'm simply going to ignore that for the moment. It's a very soft, very light fabric. When I pin on the panels, it will absorb out that edge of the cut, which will be left behind. A quick word as well about the panels not being long enough. What you would do then is you would double up and create extra fabric and create a seam right the way horizontally in the panel to create extra length. That's perfectly possible. Don't worry about that. So now what I'm going to do, by the way, if you have a fabric or even something like a coat where it's very, very thick, now I'm just literally cutting along the seam line. All right? For people who know about unpicking, don't get upset. I'm going to show everybody the unpicking option in a minute. Unpicking is a beautiful little kind of metal sharpened thing that basically takes apart the stitches in a seam. So now I'm doing this in quite a sort of a quick way, which I'm just going right the way through to the top along that seam. You can feel it there. and it's totally slit open. What you'll see is little bits of extras like this that are falling off. Do not sweat about that. Just cut it off. It will come off when you start seaming and pinning. You will make sense of that. It is not a problem. Don't give yourself extra work, which simply isn't worth it. You want to get the results. Right. And it's not going to make any difference because it will just get cut off when you trim the seam. Right, so here we go. We're going to do the same on the other side. I'm going to leave a bit spare so that I can do some close-up demonstrating of what it is to use an unpicker, because sometimes what happens is if you have a very thick, or delicate coat fabric, you might not want to just cut straight. You might want to unpick. Right. I know that when I do live workshops, etc., I'm going to be covering more of these skills in depth, and I want to start covering, all of these little queries that will come up about how to handle kind of thicker fabrics and how to deal with, making a coat bigger. One of the great skills, you can actually totally regenerate an abandoned and much favored coat by seriously just fixing it up. By the way, here is the hole. I'm just ignoring it because I'm going to recreate one, no problem. Right, so I'm going to go right to the end because I'm saving a little bit that I'm not going to cut right at the end because I'm going to demonstrate what it is to unpick close up. There you go, in case you need to know that skill. Okay, so for those of you who have a fabric which is delicate or a fabric which is thick, or you might not want to be cutting the seam directly, you might want to use an unpicker. This, everybody, is an unpicker. I've always used that term. I'm not sure if that's the strictly technical term. And as you can see, it's got the sharp, but then in fact in there is a blade. All right, it's got a lid on, etc. And what you do is you simply find where the actual seam is. Now this is a bit tricky and it's not a great example because this is very dark, so it doesn't actually show up particularly well on the camera. Right, so I'm going in there into the seam, and I can just feel it catches onto the actual original threads in the seam. You pick them up. You find them, you pick them up, and you slide right through, and they will cut the actual stitches so that you get an uncut seam. There you go. Also another little satisfying job. I'm not going to make a speech about meditation right now. I'm actually going to restrain myself. I'm being very good. Right. Okay, and obviously this is getting a bit more complicated at the end because there's a whole lot of, there's the fold over, etc. I will cut that because I just wanted to show you what an unpicker was. Normally if you were very precious about that, or were very delicate about that, not precious, precious is the wrong word. If you were delicate about that because you wanted to really save, the strong, the proper edge, or you needed all of the fabric for a coat or something, there you go. You would use the unpicker and you get the original uncut edge of seam. Okay, there you go. Right. Right, what we're going to do now is we're going to start pinning in the panels to the side of the dress. By the way, in terms of dresses and shirts and male or female or whatever, I should have mentioned this way earlier, and I'll mention it again at the end of the video. All rules apply. Shirts, male clothes, female clothes, whatever type of clothes, this is all doable, okay? What I did here, because I knew that I was going to cut the seam, it's also quite useful to create quite a wide panel, because it means, in fact, that you've got extra to make a wide seam to accommodate for some of the kind of the roughness when you've cut. So what you do here is you find the end of the panel, and you find, what I'm doing is I'm starting with the sleeve end, right? Because sometimes what happens is that fabric slightly shears off, and you want the cut to be as even from the top as possible, okay? Don't worry about that. It's minor in terms of the amount it's going to shear. So what's happening here is I put it to the end, right? I match up. By the way, here what you can see is the front side of the fabric. That's the back side. That's the front side. You match front to front. Front side of the panel, back side of the panel is slightly lighter. This is not great because it's actually a black fabric. And what you do is you put front side to front side so that when the seam turns inside out, you will only see the front sides, okay? I'm trying to include all levels of sewing in this tutorial. So if stuff here is like, okay, I'm teaching you how to suck eggs, just bear with me, me hearties. I've restrained myself already a few times from talking about meditation, so please show some kindness for the old lady. Right, okay, so here we go. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm leaving a little bit on the end for a seam, all right? And I am going to match that up there, and I'm going to just start pinning, okay? Now you see this lovely little bracelet here, a thing of wonder, a little pin cushion thing, very, very, very useful when you're doing wild pinning. Right, there you go. And what I'm doing here is I'm making the seam actually quite small. Don't fuss with huge seams, so I don't have to cut a lot, all right? But what I'm doing is I'm making sure that there's enough width there, okay, to cover if there's any strange bits of this and that from when I cut the seam. All right, so there you go. And what you're going to do is you're going to go all the way down, right? You're going to go all the way down, obviously matching it up evenly and pinning. Look, that's just nonsense, don't worry about that. That came from when I hacked the seam, or hacked is the wrong word, cut. Right, there you go, just cut that out. It's not necessary, that will just come out later. We'll just zigzag over all of that stuff. That's going to go all the way down, right, get pinned. Again, don't worry about this. Right. Okay, that's going to get pinned, right, all the way, right the way down to the bottom, down to the hem. There is excess there, there's plenty of excess. You will cut that off later. What you're also going to do is what I like to do is I don't size before I've sewn. I sew in so that I tend to have extra fabric from the panel, and then you've got choices in terms of how much you can do. You do a third seam down the middle of the panel, and in that seam you do your final size adjustments, so it doesn't have to be too perfect. My recommendation is that your panel is wider than what you need. Now here at the top, now this is important, okay, because you want to get something which is even and not displaced, is I want to see how much extra fabric I left there, all right, for the hem. I want the same amount to be here, okay? I want the same amount of extra fabric to be there because I want this evenly lined up, all right? There you go. Now, just going to do the same thing and actually pin down this other side all the way down to the bottom hem again, so that effectively what you will have is you will have pinned in, there you go, there's the panel down the side. It's very wide. I've given myself a lot of extra fabric. That doesn't matter, it just shows that I can play around with it later and put in a third seam. All right, so there you go, you have your panel. Just reverse that out. You have your panel that you're pinning in front to front from the sleeve section right the way down to the bottom, and you do that on both sides, pinning on both sides. All right, the next thing we're going to do after this, the royal we, is we are going to sew down, okay, and then we're going to zigzag, and then we're going to look at finessing, right, the alterations in the final seam. I just wanted to quickly talk here as well about the end. That is the bottom end of the dress seam. You do not have to undo that. Don't worry about it. Just sew like that, and you can just patch up, or it's not patch up, you can just add in your hem on the other side on the bottom there's no problem later on. You don't have to unpick that. If it's a more complicated, more sophisticated job like a coat, yes, you can then if you want. Hi there. Now what I'm doing is I'm just showing you obviously some of the basic sewing as we do the seams. Scratching around here with the sewing machine foot. Obviously I set the sewing machine up with a complementary thread, which obviously in this case is black. I've set it to straight stitch, and what we do here, when you start off at the top of the seam, I'm just going to quickly do this here. What you do is you must go forward, but because you're going to be folding over this edge here to create a hem, you must go back as well to create a strong edge. So you go forward, back, and then you just go straight down through everything, my sewing machine, through everything. This has got a bit of fraying. It's not fraying, it's the edge of the sewing, it's the edge of the print. So just ignore that. Normally it would be straight on. Just sew go, all the way down. I'm coming up here to the hole, and because I don't want the hassle of recreating, this is the hole for the strap, because I don't want the hassle of recreating the hole later on, is I'm actually just going to leave the hole here. So I'm going to go backwards and forwards there, and then pick up the sewing. I'll cut off the threads later on. Pick up the sewing again after the hole. There you go. So that I don't have to unpick or deal with that again later. There you go. Just keep going all the way down. There you go, all the way down. What I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly zoom in. Okay, so as you can see, I'm sewing all the way down, and you're going to get right to the end, and at the end you need to do exactly the same thing. Is you need to go backwards and forwards right at the bottom to create the strengthened corner for where you're going to fold up and create your bottom edge hem. Okay, so obviously what's happening here is you see any little bit edges like that. Once you've done your seams, you will cut those off. Snip, snip. There's a hand scissors, what will happen is that you'll eventually have your two panels in down the side of your item of clothing, whether that's a shirt, whether that's a dress, whatever it is. You can even, by the way, do this for trousers. I'll talk about this again at the end of the video. And yes, so you're going to put in your two panels right now with your 4 seams. Trim off any edges, and then after that you're going to be doing your zigzagging to make sure that your edges are clean and sealed off so that they don't fray off. Okay, marvelous. As I said repeatedly, this will leave me with extra fabric to play around with the specifics of the fit. Just a quick word about fabric types, particularly soft fabrics that can move around very easily. It is highly advised that you do pin that entire seam, because you do not want things falling away as you sew. Sometimes they can be very sensitive to the sewing machine, okay? Particularly softer fabrics. Here you go, at the end I'm just doing the reverse sweep again. Right, just to strengthen the corner for when we put in the bottom seam. There you go. As you can see, I am just trimming off these strange little edges. Not a worry, to get the seams ready to zigzag. Okay, which will seal them from fraying. Very important. All right, there you go. Right. Now what I'm doing is I'm zigzagging the seams. Same rules apply, but I really like to go backwards and forwards. Oopsie, I love it. That's when I'm pressing here. You actually can't see. It's a button one return. Right. Obviously, what happens with zigzag stitches, you can change the size of them. Even on the most starter sewing machines, you'll always get the opportunity to change the zigzag size for different seam sizes. I've made my seam small to start off with here. Generally, seams are often made bigger, which you then cut into. I've just trimmed off the edge here. The reason why I kept it small is because I knew that I only needed it small. And it would just create extra hassle. So I've just done it that size. And then what you do is you zigzag all the way. Just a quick word about getting to the hole, the tie hole. What happens here is that I'm going to stop and obviously not zigzag close the seam. And I will sort that out with a little bit of hand sewing later on to finish off the edge. Now I'm just going backwards and, oopsie, that can't be, so let me just do it with the other hand. Just going backwards and forwards to strengthen that edge again. There you go. So the same rules apply. Obviously you're going to sew and you're going to zigzag all 4 seams to get your panel through. Et voila. I just wanted to do a quick infomercial on these things, which are basically a thing of wonder. They're little snippers. You can get them online. You can get them at markets. You can get them at haberdashery shops. They are enormously useful when you're working, when you want to just snip off the thread. Okay. Right, everybody. So now I have sewn in both panels on both sides. That's 4 seams. Straight sewing and zigzag so that they're finished off. So what you see here is you see the inside of the dress with the inside of the panel, the outside of the dress with the outside of the panel, and both panels are sewn in on both sides, and you will see up there as well. I'm just showing you the inside. I haven't ironed yet. What you need to do now is you need to straighten off this bottom edge, because obviously you are not going to have a hem that is that long. You do not need all of that. Now, it is important when you cut the edge of this that you cut it straight so that it's not kind of effectively going like that, because you're going to have a problem later on. One of the best ways to do that is you fold over. You fold over, and you can see where that side of the original dress meets the other side of the original dress, and it gives you a nice even place to cut. So I'm going to get the pins here. It's not particularly dramatic. It doesn't have to be 100% perfect, but you want to have something even that will be easy to hem later on. I'm going to zoom in on this in a second. So there you go. Cut that off. That is waste. Let me just quickly go in there. Excuse the noise. Can you see that I have indeed actually cut off enough at the bottom for a hem? Right. Marvelous. I'm going to do the other on the same. I'm going to do the same on the other side. This is here ironing before I start to look at properly shaping the garment on these very wide panels with an additional side seam. Okay, because I made these panels very, very big so that we would have the opportunity to shape down the side. Right. So what I'm doing now is I'm ironing the seams flat. It's an incredibly useful thing to do. It will give you a better result at the end, and you will be able to control the next step better because the fabric will lie flat once you start to put in that third seam. I use a steam iron. Very, very, very much quicker. What you can do is you set the heat a little bit low, and you put the steam heat up high. You put the steam amount up high, and so you can get a nice smooth seam that way. Of course, I'm going to now iron all 4 seams, and then I'm going to try on plans, and see what the outcome is so far before we start tailoring it down to make it fit correctly. Right, everybody, what I want to show you now is I want to show you the first fitting. Now, I've gone far back so that you can see the whole cut, all right? Now, at this moment in time, as far as I'm concerned, this is not the kind of dress I wanted. It is too large. I didn't want a full-on kaftan frock. I wanted something which is more shaped. Not too shaped, but more shaped, all right? So what we have here is we have too much because of these panels. That is not a problem. Now we go on to the next stage, where we start to shape these panels with the third seam and side seam. By the way, as I did say at the start of the video, it is entirely possible to put in an insert on the side of a garment, male so-calledly, female so-calledly, shirt, whatever it is, trousers, and to not have to do the third shaping seam. I erred on the side of caution, all right, and I put in extra fabric, knowing that it is likely that I would want to shape this soft, flowing shaped dress. I'm going to now turn the dress inside out so that you can have a better look, because the fabric is light and dark on the inside. You can have a better look to see where the panels are, and I'll zoom in. Right, so this is the inside out view, which I have just pinned. I've actually not used the ties, so that you can actually, so that the panels are not obstructed from view. So that you can see it's actually a very wide panel that's been put in the side. All right, and it does that. So that's what you can see when it's inside out. You can see exactly where the panels are. I'm just going to go a little bit further back. So you can see that is where the panels are, and it is too big. I do not want it this big. I do not want it this big. No, I want to shape it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to lay out the fabric and to start shaping the sides. Marvelous. Right, now here we have the garment inside out because we're going to start putting in these side seams of which I speak. So first of all, what we've got to do is we've got to fold the panel over at its half bit. Right, you fold it over. So what I'm going to do now, just to make sure that that fold is actually easier to see, I'm just going to pin it down at the corners of where the original dress meets the original dress, so that it's easier to find the fold when you lay out the dress now. And what you're doing is you're laying this out flat. If you don't have a table, I find floors are very, very useful. Not only for standing on, but for making things. Right, I found them to be very useful historically. So what we have here is we have the entire side of the dress which is unshaped. All right, I'm just going to quickly move that, which is unshaped. Now I'm going to move the camera and put it behind me so that you can see this process that I'm going to start putting into place of creating some shape down the side of the dress. Here I have the pins, and we're right up at the top of the sleeve. Now I knew that the sleeve was vast, so I'm going to make it quite a lot smaller. All right, and I'm going to follow the line of the original dress. Right, I'm pinning this as I go along. I'm going to follow the line of the original dress. Follow, 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 follow. Now what happens here is there's the opportunity again to follow the line. All right, we follow the line. Sometimes you will just follow the line, and sometimes you will make various adjustments as you go along. This is my first pin and my first check. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I pin the one side, then I test it on myself, and I prefer to go for slightly sewing so that there's too much fabric so I can edit again later, as opposed to too little. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to pin all the way down, all right, and then I'm going to take the camera and pan across it to show you what that pin looks like. Then I'm going to try it on, sew it, and test it. A quick pan down the seam to show you what I've done to bring in the shape. I have actually followed the line so far. That's my first edit with the pinning. I will no doubt adjust it later again. It is a first rough pin. I'm now going to try that on and show you the results. Marvelous. Right, now I'm checking my first pin. All right, and as you see here, you won't necessarily be able to see it because it's very black. This is the, I'll turn it around in a second. This is the unpinned side. This is the pinned side. And in fact, I'm finding that that is perfect. I'll come closer in a second. I'm finding that still keeps the shape, right? But it's still flowing enough. I'm just going to come a little bit closer so you can see. There it is. There's the panel in the side. Yes, it's different, but I don't think it's life-alteringly jarring. I think it's fairly synonymous. And let me just pin that back again. So you can see, right? You can see the difference there. And you've seen the seam earlier on. I'm really doing this kind of step by step. I'm going to turn it inside out right now so you can see the pinning and you can see its effect. Right, everybody, that's inside out. That is the unpinned panel. That is the pinned panel with all the excess. So I did put in a lot of excess, but it gave me room to maneuver. All right, sometimes if you don't have enough fabric, you might not have the space to put in this much excess. But it's best to pin after once you've put in the panel so that you can get the sizing precisely correct. There you go, that's inside out. Right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin down the other side, and I'm going to show you how to do that in a way that makes them both equal. Yes, jazz hands, equal seams. What we have here is we have the unpinned other side of the dress. Now what I'm going to do is I've laid that out flat because I know I need to pin it. What I have here is this side, okay? This is my already pinned side. So I lay that, I turn the garment inside out. I lay out flat the side I still need to pin. And I take the bit I have pinned and I lay it alongside it at exactly the same point of where the sleeve is and the hem is, so that they're actually lined up so that you're going to get the same width. What I see there is, and I judge it by the eye, you can of course measure it, is I see that I want to mimic that seam width on my second side seam. So while looking at that, I pin the other side seam. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a close-up of this from behind me. All right, so you see that there is the unpinned side, that is the pinned side. You lay them next to each other like that, and then you pin down following the line. So I have pinned down both sides. I will then obviously sew down the pinning line. I will then cut the seam and I will zigzag the edge. So the next thing you'll see is the zigzagged edge, which of course I will iron. So I'm going to just jump through those steps right now because you've seen them before, and come to the sewn, zigzagged, ironed new seams and the next try on. There you go. Now you're just sewing down the line, taking out the pins as you go along. Et voila, I'll do that down both seams. As you can see, now that seam is sewn. That's the same on both sides with all of this stuff spare. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off the edge. I'm including all steps in this video in case you really need confirmation of what to do. There you go. So I'm cutting off, and I'm not making the seam very big because it's a soft flowing dress. So I don't want a big bulky seam. The seam is about 1 centimeter, and I just cut that along, and that is ready to start zigzagging now, and then I will iron as promised. I just wanted to quickly show you what the panel looks like in terms of actually kind of merging with the garment. It really isn't all of that, you know, kind of like, it's not really all that noticeable. It kind of just merges in and you will barely notice it. So this often happens when you find a kind of complementary fabric when you're doing alterations, is you eventually just barely notice it at all. I'm just quickly going to talk about hemming the bottom edge, which applies to all of the other bits of hemming that you will need to do, which is at both bottoms of both side panels and the tops where the sleeves are. What I'm going to do here to keep this super light in keeping with the rest of the garment is I'm going to do an easy type of zigzagged edged hem. Now you see that that's not quite even, so what I do there is I just quickly, that's fine, it just happens with soft fabrics, they slightly go out of order, but it's basically still lying flat. I've evened that out. What I'm going to do now is I simply zigzag the end there, fold over, and then plain sew, and it gives you a perfectly smooth hem. Once I've done that, I will quickly show that to you, and then the dress will be ready. There you go, that is the seam. That is one of the bottom edge seams. I'm just going to turn it the other way around. Very, very simple. It's just zigzagged, and then, sorry, I'm trying to get the light there. It's just zigzagged and then folded over. Absolutely fine, very, very light, okay? There you go. Right, so I'm going to try on inside out right now, and then bada binga. Hi, there you go, okay? So now I've got the refitted, slimmed down dress. It still has got shape, but it's much, much, much more comfortable. All right, basically I've just given it a couple more sizes. So there you go, that's close up. It's still got the shape, and it's got, I've shown you this inside out to show you the panels. So the panels started off very large and have now become slimmer. Okay, so I'm very happy with this. It's totally loose, totally comfortable. I'm just going to turn it inside out right now, and then we can have the finished version. Right, so there you go. That's inside out, and you can see that that actually fits me comfortably, but still keeps its shape. I hope you can see that. I'm doing like flappity flap. Right, there you go. So I'm very happy with that. I like a dress like this. It's got this kind of, it's got the tie around here. Et voilà, zut alors. The steps are actually very simple. This you can apply to anything. Let me just stand back. The steps are very simple. This you can apply to anything. Male, female, shirts, coats, jackets, dresses, even trousers. You can do this in. It's all the same principle. You have to be a little bit careful with the materials that you're working with sometimes. And there you go. All right. Very, very, very useful. You have something you really love and you need to fix it up. Right. Right, in summary, here I am. I am now happily wearing this frock. I was much attached to the idea of fixing this one. I was kind of saving it up to do this video. So there you go. Fits me very happily, not too big, not too small. I did make an excessive panel down the sides to start off with, and then that was possible to be altered ad nauseum, which is absolutely fine. It just gives you extra fabric to play with. What I wanted to quickly do here is I wanted to just show you some of the other exemplars. I did this in the introduction, but I want to redo it right now to show you some of the other exemplars I have of what I've done. Now, clearly, I seem to like my clothes vast. I like my clothes loose, really, either properly fitting or properly loose. And I did this here with a shirt. I just wanted it kind of huge and flowing. So I put the panels in the side. Same thing, panels in the side, super simple, no shaping to that, okay? This one is a red velvet jacket. I did actually manage to find the precise matching material for that. And this one, I did have to do more extensive fitting and shaping in it, all right? I think you can probably see there that there are extra panels. I'm trying to get the kind of the light in on that. You see there are extra panels down the side, so it can be done as well for a jacket. All right. This one, and this is another example, this is a brown sort of check jacket, and I put in panels down the side, barely noticeable, complementary, larger check. There you go. I also embellished that one, right? Some strangely small size, and I adjusted it. So you can do it on a jacket as well, as I said. You've got to find the complementary fabric. Here, this is a coat that I did it on, much loved coat. I wanted to be able to actually put a jumper underneath it. It was too fitting. So I've shown this one in the introductory video, and there you go. I put a panel down the side in complementary fabric. It's not perfect, it's complementary. It's always got the same sort of scratchy sort of flex. And then I embellished it afterwards with spiderweb cobwebs, as you do, because you haven't lived. Unless you've embroidered spiderweb cobwebs. And here what I wanted to do is I wanted a giant yellow coat, and I just couldn't find any that were like that. And there you go. So I put in this matching PVC yellow panel. There you go. Now I love it. It's exactly what I want, and I will have it for a very long time. This, again, I showed this in the introductory video. This is one of my favorites of all time. It's a huge, big beige duvet coat, but I wanted it huge because I wanted to be able to kind of put everything around it. It's got the nice elasticated wrists, so basically you keep warm on the bus, life on the bus, good life on the bus. And so I put in a vast fleece panel in there. So basically the same rules apply to all of these projects. I just wanted to show examples from the dress. Obviously, you know, there's a shirt there, a casual shirt. You can do it on all different types of shirts. As I said, you can do it on trousers. So the rule on the street is keep going, keep fixing. I am very happy to have made this video. I've had people asking me for a long time, yeah, like 5 people, but anyhow, people asking me for a long time to show them how to do this, because they have beloved clothes that they do not want to give up and they want to own, and they want to reduce their shopping. So hopefully this will be of some value. I've discovered something. I gasp as I speak, because I'm trying to get in breath, all right, trying to get in breath. So much to say. Anyhow, yes. So what do? You subscribe, like, and share with your friends. Keep on spreading the message. There are ways to repurpose what we own and to make it better than it was before. Let's learn how to covet what we already own and enjoy it even more without constantly hitting the shops seeking to appease the void. To that end, me, the samples, I am the sample, the fabric, threads, and Pierre, we say goodbye until next time. Project Alteration, Ultimate Home Couture, making the ordinary extraordinary. Covet what you own.